The scripture passage Allie chose for this morning fits beautifully into our summer theme of belonging, and I wanted to do my best to honor that and not switch things up too much. So while I know you're probably dying to hear what a sermon put together in about 2 hours would have sounded like, I think it's important to still participate in the act of testimony today. Religious studies scholar Diana Butler Bass writes about the importance of testimony in Christian life in her book, Christianity for the Rest of Us. She says, testimony is not a formula of salvation. Rather, it is a way of being, a map to an undiscovered country. And in telling the stories of our lives, we find we are not alone on the journey. Testimony itself is an avenue of creating and reminding us of our shared belonging. So in that spirit, I've invited a couple folks to participate in an impromptu belonging Q&A of sorts, so we still engage in this fundamental process of sharing with one another the ways we've seen God move in each of our lives. So a massive thank you and an invitation up to Brian Schutz, Craig Biley, and Dana Stanky this morning. Thank you all for being willing to answer the call very on the fly. Very, very, very on the fly. All right. Testing. Yup. Cool. They'll get passed down and around as we need them. So, you all have just been given the prompt of belonging in about an hour's time, but I do have a few kind of questions to guide us that I'm sure a lot of folks have been reflecting on as we've been going through this series this summer, thinking about what it means to belong to God and belong to each other. So I'll ask a few questions and you all can share. Well, I was going to say as much, maybe not as much, or as little as you'd like on the matter as we enjoy receiving the beautiful works of God and community in each of y'all's lives. So when in your life have you felt most aware that you belong to God? And we all can sit in that question together.
I think I've always known that, which is unusual, I think.
Yeah.
But I just remember as a child, I felt like I was in the palm of God's hand. And I did not grow up necessarily in a believing family. And so, I also moved around a lot as a kid, and so we didn't go to church a lot. So I took myself to church with a friend in 7th grade, and I've been in church ever since.
Wow.
So I don't know. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
There you go. Amazing.
I don't know exactly when it was. When I was younger, it was more important to belong to the groups around me. I wasn't really thinking about God necessarily. I was more concerned with fitting in with whatever group I happened to be with. I think that as I've gotten older and more confident in who I am and who I am at my core, I'm a little bit different. Those of you guys who know me. And, you know, I think when I was younger, it was more of, even though I was trying to belong to these groups, I never felt that I belonged to these groups. You know, I think it was W.C. Fields that said, I would never join a club that would have me as a member. And so not feeling confident in who I was really kept me as an outsider. At some point, as I've gotten older, I realized that, you know, being who I am is honoring God, and being a part of this community has really helped that. And so I think, I don't know exactly when it was, but, it was probably within the last 10, 15 years.
And Brian, thanks for teeing things up about not fitting in. Because I've also experienced a whole lot of that in my whole life too. And so you sound like a bit of a misfit. So to quote one of my favorite Christmas specials, Santa Claus is coming to town. I know, let's be misfits together. If anybody remembers that line. So for me, I was brought to church. I was made to go to church. When I was a child, it was a different church than the UCC, one with a very strong belief in telling you what to believe, but we won't go any further than that. So there was a point where, when Matthew was born, Kathy and I wanted to find a church to get some kind of connection. We had him baptized in our former church, and we found a UCC church in our town of Marlborough, Connecticut. Fantastic church. And when I went for information night, there were probably 10 people there, and everybody kind of went around the room and said, yeah, I was looking for change, or I was brought up in a different religion, I'm just, looking for change. And I was actually the last one, and I looked around and I said, well, I'm gonna say what I think other people might be thinking. What won't say is I was brought up a Catholic and I can't take it anymore. Everybody kind of nodded their heads and said, yep, get it. And the pastor there said, here's kind of what we are. Everybody can read the Bible. We all interpret it a little differently, and went through the spiel. And I stopped and I said, there really is a church where you can ask questions and think for yourself. Sign me up. And that's where I really started to develop the sense of feeling in the hands of God. But in addition to that, I've kind of always felt like God is there with me in a really strange way. Someone a long time ago told me about a prayer that they had said, when you lose something, St. Anthony is associated with lost causes and things like that, right? And so she said, the prayer is, St. Anthony, please come around. Something is lost and must be found. God has failed me once in my entire life. There's a car key out there that I haven't found. St. Anthony couldn't find it. But yeah, God is there, and you don't always realize how it's going to happen. But for me, that's one of the ways.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Brian and Craig both touched a little bit on kind of like senses of not belonging in a social sense, in a human sense. But I guess along those lines, I would ask, even in those moments, those times when you felt you didn't belong, say maybe among people, where did you feel God in those seasons, or see God in those seasons? Or maybe you didn't, but...
Anyone else wants to go?
Yeah, start first. That's a tough one.
My church life has been very, very varied. Very, very varied. I kind of grew up in the Presbyterian church and then became a fundamentalist like in junior high and more high school, which was damaging, I think. I have been to evangelical churches, I've been to non-denominational churches, I've been to Pentecostal churches, I've the gamut. And for some reason, I felt very comfortable as a fundamentalist during those years. It was the years of the Vietnam War and Manson, and it was crazy. I thought the world was crazy, so that was very comforting to me. And the question was?
The question was, in those moments where you didn't feel you belonged, and where did you still see God in those?
Okay, so as I was kind of coming out of fundamentalism, I was still going to church, but it wasn't fitting. It was like I was a square peg in a round hole, and I was still going to church, but it wasn't resonating with me any longer. And so I went through probably 10 years of I don't know if I believe this or not, until we joined a progressive Southern Baptist church in Waco, Texas. And our and I realized that you can read the Bible and wow, you can ask questions, and it isn't necessarily black and white, and it blew my mind. And I think I grew closer to God during those years, and I was healed. And of course, now I'm here, and wow, this is wonderful. So I don't know if I answered the
Thank you.
question,
No.
but there you go.
It's all good. All of it's good.
I can say that mine was really music. I wasn't good at lessons. My sister's shaking her head. Yeah, but I loved music. I could sit and play for hours, and that was. And it didn't matter if, what the music was that I was listening to, just learning to appreciate all that went into it, all the different instruments and the different musicians and everything that was done to create whatever music it was that I was listening to. It was really that sense of everybody has a part to play, and it doesn't matter if you are the lead guitarist, the lead singer, the recording engineer, the light guy. Everybody plays a role to make this thing happen, and that was really it was really a kind of an epiphany for me, where it was like, yeah, we all play a role in this. We may not be the lead role, but we all have a part in it, and it all falls apart without us. And I think that's really where I found my God moments.
And those are both great, and I'll be very brief here because it's still a tough question for me. But despite not always fitting in social settings with humans, haven't figured humans out yet, but someday maybe I will. Yeah, no kidding. But one thing I've always, and I didn't think about it as God when I was younger, but nature and just creation, that it's so amazing to be able to go to the ocean. When I was a kid, we used to go to Cape Cod, Massachusetts every other year for vacation, just to stand on top of the dunes and look at the vastness of it, and then go fishing and to go hiking and to just be outdoors. The gifts that we are given. And again, and when I was much younger, and as I got older, I didn't think that way, but as I got older, it's, wow, look what God has given us. And however you view creation, from a purely biblical sense or science-oriented, or I'm kind of somewhere in between, and I have my own bizarre interpretation of that. Yeah, somebody's there with us. Somebody or something did all this for us, and I guess that's kind of how it started.
I love when we find God in all those little thin spaces, or all the places we would never expect. And I think that's always a good reminder that there is that grander sense of belonging, maybe not amongst other people, because who are those? But in the whole web of creation. It's beautiful. I think my last question I have for you all this morning is specifically thinking about this community. You've all made your way here somehow or another. So what helps you feel like you belong in this church community?
Can I start with this one? Yes. Okay. This particular church.
Yeah.
Okay. So we moved here from Connecticut. We belong to a UCC church, so we got here, so we've got to find a church. And so which church do you go to? Wow, how do you pick a church? You can't go to all of them. And I said, okay, UCC, obviously we're going to start there. We live in Loveland. There's a church in Loveland. Makes sense to start here. Then there's Fort Collins and Longmont, all those things. So what made me feel like I belonged here? Just to welcome his aunt, Kathy. Very first Sunday we were here, we were greeted so warmly. And we were invited to lunch with the Schutz group, who the family would go out to lunch on Sunday. Never met these people before. It's, Craig, Kathy, you got to come to lunch with us. And we couldn't. We didn't, afraid of people and all this stuff and everything, this whole thing. Social situations are tough, but the love and the warmth, this is our family. We moved out here to Colorado. We have no family here. This is our family here.
Thank you, Craig. Yep, there you go.
Well, the way I came here was my daughter, Alexandra, who's usually in the front, Charlie's mom, had come to this church. She had gone to Plymouth for a while and then moved to Loveland and wanted to find a church with a female pastor, and came here, and it wasn't Tunde Way, it was the female to Erin. And that was it for her. And so when I moved to Fort Collins, we live in Fort Collins, Allie suggested Plymouth, and I'd been there as a guest, but then I came here 1 week, and that was it. I heard Tunde Way, and I had never had a female main pastor, and I was just blown away and felt very much at home. And people here are so friendly. Oh my goodness. And I will say, in case you are not involved in any small group within the church, Tuesday mornings, Lectio Divino, those people are the people that come, and various people have come throughout, but that has been a cornerstone for me. And also Mahjong. We don't talk about God necessarily, but we get to know one another. We get to have fun, but that has been wonderful for me. So, and it's been a group that accepted weird old me. And so if you're not in a small group, or you don't have a group that you belong to within the church, I just encourage you to do that. It's just getting to know new people is wonderful.
So I'm a little bit different, as usual. I grew up in the church. I think we started coming here in, well, a lot of you weren't born yet, but 1965 was I think, when we first started coming here. So this church has always been a part of my life, and seeing it grow and change and evolve and become what it is today has just been amazing. I was here when I was a young kid. There were 2 services, one in English, one in German. There was German adult Sunday school. Old Manny Betts. And just being so proud of who we've become, and looking around and seeing this congregation, seeing the diversity, seeing these people that, some of you I'm just getting to know, some of you I've known my entire life. And it is such an incredible feeling of belonging to come here on a Sunday morning. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. I am truly grateful for you all being willing to take this on, and I think you offered wonderful wisdom and insight to everyone today. And this is why it is important to take the time to hear the voices that are present within our congregation. So I thank you all. I thank everyone who's already given testimony and will give testimony. What an awesome, beautiful opportunity for this congregation moving forward. So while I've got you all up here, would everyone join me in a spirit of prayer? Gracious and loving God, God who calls each and every one of us by name, thank you. Thank you that we can know that we are yours. Thank you for a community where a welcome is not just said, it is felt. Thank you that we can know that we truly belong to one another just as we belong to you. Thank you for the countless stories in this room. Though they are unfinished, they carry such great wisdom and truth and triumph. Lord, teach us to listen to each other, to be curious about each other, and help us to live as people who belong to you and to each other. Amen. Amen. Thank you all.